What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Quarters Podcast, your go-to for all things NFL draft, little college football, everything in between, some shenanigans, me mispronouncing words. That's become like a topic out there on YouTube, and it's going to continue being a topic there. Today, we're diving into another 2025 NFL mock draft based on Week 11 finishes from last week. We mocked it up. We're going to spotlight some players in this one, so a little bit different. Instead of going pick by pick, we're going to go highlighted players here, looking at some team needs as we're seeing the team needs go there, and just talk about who could shape the future of the league. All right. One thing that I want to mention too with these mock drafts, the reason why we're going to do these, we're doing them once a month. If you haven't noticed that, it's what we've been doing on the show here to kind of just see this. Obviously, as the offseason progresses, we'll do a little bit more of these, more player-centric focus there. But it is fun to see kind of how they are doing out there. We talked about Dane Brugler's list last week. If you haven't checked that out, go check it out of his top 50 there. So we wanted to use that list, kind of what the consensus out there, and kind of go through it. So here's what we have. The first 8 picks here. Travis Hunter, just athlete. That's what he is. We don't know where he's going in terms of where he's going to play the most, but he is an athlete out there. Tedero McMillan, number 2 to the Titans, which I haven't seen that too much. Christian made that pick there. 3, Abdul Carter, edge out of Penn State. 4 is Cam Ward, first quarterback off the board of the Giants. Shedeur Sanders goes to the Raiders. Everybody loves that pick. That's like just a lock-in pick right now. Will Campbell, offensive tackle, going to the Patriots. Mason Graham, defensive tackle, going to the Jets, and then Will Johnson for the that's a great pick there for the Panthers. But we're going to start with Abdul Carter. So he got picked by myself, sitting here at edge. And the reason why I did this, when you're looking at just the Browns draft needs. So if you're looking kind of what they do, I think the glaring one is quarterback, right? What the hell do they do there? I think we've talked about it enough. Like, hey, so for my scenario here, they move off of that. So, and you know what? Wide receiver possibly could be that guy. You're thinking of, but Tillman's look good. Judy's look good there. So best player available, you just take the best player. And to me, that's Abdul Carter at this spot. Edge rusher out of Penn State, PFF defensive grade, 86.9, pass rushing grade, 90.7. Just a toolsy guy, high ceiling type of guy that could definitely make an impact. And when you look at the roster, trade away Zadarius Smith, Alex Wright's there, Isaiah McGuire's there. They do have Myles Garrett, but, Abdul would be a good fit on that defensive line. I don't think you can fix that quarterback position and where it's at there. On the season, he has 8 sacks. He has 5 hits, 26 hurries, so he gets after the quarterback. I like this fit. What about you, Christian?
Yeah, so, I mean, when I first saw it, I was like, well, that's a little strange. But then you look at the Browns roster, and it's like, man, if they can get another premier edge rusher opposite Myles Garrett, this defense could, return to some of the elite play that we saw a couple of years ago. And quite frankly, when you look up and down the rosters, Zadarius Smith is still their second leading sack getter right now. And he was traded a couple of weeks ago now. They just don't have a solid option outside of Myles Garrett. And really, Isaiah McGuire has been good as a run defender, and I think that he's been okay when he's been on the field. Alex Wright just hasn't played a whole lot. There's just not a lot there. So this is one of those like underrated picks that I don't think we're seeing a whole lot. A lot of folks really want to give them a quarterback. I just don't see that as a route that they will go. A lot of folks want to give them a tackle. It's also a pretty weak tackle class. Yeah. If Abdul Carter's sitting there for the Browns, I struggle to see how they would pass him up and pass up the opportunity to match him up with Myles Garrett.
No, it makes sense. I think people tend to forget, alongside this trade with Deshaun Watson went a lot of picks, along with all the money. So you're seeing a lot of very cheap veteran contracts making up the depth and the rotational pieces of this defense and the offense. And we're a couple years removed from getting that elite depth in the draft. This is obviously not that. This is giving you a premier edge rusher, but you just mentioned the depth at edge rusher possible. There's a reason it's so barren and shallow. I don't think you want to spend the money again like you did with Smith. I think getting a guy like this is smart. It also might be a year where they trade back if they're this high, but to try and maybe double dip and get the tackle and the edge. But if you're sticking here, at this point, from what we've seen from Carter as compared to like a Will Campbell this year, Carter's exceeded every expectation, shown the development you want, while the tackle class hasn't. So it's a great pick.
That's a good call for Randy too. God, I hate when he makes good points. It sucks.
I
But
know.
like
So unlikable.
the trading back part, I think makes a lot of sense. I think the next one we should do a lot of trades so we can kind of move around a little bit. I think it'd be fun there. But I do think, like you said, I think the edge class is pretty deep in this one. So if they're sitting there and they have a lot of guys graded kind of similar in that same tier, maybe they look back and say, hey, we can get back in that 15 to 18 range. Maybe someone really wants a quarterback or looks at this edge and really wants to get up, or maybe Ted McMillan falls sitting in that range in that top 5 and someone wants to move up there. They could grab extra capital. Like you said, they gave up a lot in that trade, get some more picks, some players there, and then just take the best available edge at 15, 18, 20, wherever they kind of move back to. I definitely think that could be a good mention. So that's a good point, Randy. I'll give you that there. All right, let's move on to the next pick that we're going to highlight. Cam Ward. He goes to the Giants. The Giants are in disarray right now, boys. They are like that. They lost the team. I don't know if the general manager, I don't know if the head coach is still going to be there. It looks like they're tanking. They're starting Tommy DeVito. I almost said Danny DeVito because whatever.
He's about as good as Danny DeVito. Good Lord.
Guy. So when you're looking at that, like, that's where they're going there. Why did you take Cam Ward here for the Giants, Randy?
It definitely wasn't just to have Shedeur on the board for the Raiders. No, I do think, the Giants trying to mix with, again, it's a little bit of a mixed bag because I made this pick while people started their jobs. But, it's from what we were looking at, from all the hard knocks and everything and what they were looking for the next quarterback and with the system, what it would work and why Jaden Daniels was a good fit, why Drake May was a good fit. If they could have traded up for either, they weren't able to. I think Cam Ward can do the same stuff. I do think he can fit in many systems, though. I do think he can use the legs a little bit, but I mean, 450 passing attempts, 451, 3,700 yards, 34 touchdowns, 7 picks. And most of those picks are him holding the ball too long and playing hero ball a bit. Not a lot of huge mistakes, not a lot of common mistakes. It's just him doing all the extra stuff and making those plays. Same thing we saw with Caleb last year. He's got the number one receiver. He's got some good help around him, but he's just been very efficient most of the time. And he's doing good under pressure. Everything happens and everything's good. This offensive line has been in shambles for the Giants. So it's just another way of, let's get a guy in here that can run a bit and is used to it and can play with that kind of situation. Obviously, Shedeur's the same thing, but this team, it's another example. It's the same with the Raiders for the next one. You passed on the quarterback or you couldn't get it last year. It's been a detriment to your team. Even if it's not the best quarterback class necessarily, I think a few of these teams just have to make the move. And right now for the Giants, for this future, getting an exciting prospect like Cam Ward that can kind of light up the scoreboard for you. And hopefully that defense can continue to grow with some of that youth. And I just think it's a good mixture of what you're going to be going forward. Obviously, we need to see the GM and coach to see how it really fits, because that could be more Shedeur. Heck, that could be more Aller. That could be more Ewers. I mean, we have a few different styles of quarterbacks in this class, but guy that can do it with the legs, with the arm, make the big plays, try and carry the team on your back. That's what I'm expecting the Giants to want.
Christian, I have a question because I've been seeing it in draft Twitter out there for Giants. And if anybody's ever seen Giants social media, it is a cesspool of just toxicity, but I love it. I love kind of I never get involved. I just peruse it. But I did see them talking about, hey, this tackle class isn't great. Hey, we've reached on that position before. It hasn't been amazing there. Hey, maybe they don't like the quarterbacks. And there are some contingent of fans out there that want Ted McMillan to pair with Malik Neighbors. And my argument is they have way too many holes. They got to try to fill it, maybe trade back at that point. But could you see a Ted McMillan, Malik Neighbors, and then basically I don't think they have the money for Sam, but maybe Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, depending on what's going on in the Steelers?
I think that's a viable route. I will say, I think that's underrating that the rest of that receiving core a little bit. I don't necessarily, I think you're right that they have too many holes. It's not a great receiving core by any means, but like Wan'Dale Robinson with a competent quarterback, I think is a fine player. I think, there's still potential for Jalen Hyatt to be something, even though I've never been very high on Hyatt. I think that his role with a good quarterback could be heightened a little bit. So I think if they're going to go that route, it would make more sense to take just Will Campbell in this situation. And kind of figure out where he's going to play and pass on the quarterback. There's a part of me that every time I watch these quarterbacks play every week, I'm like, yeah, I don't think the NFL is really going to be as high as media is, or even as high as we've been in these mocks, just because here's the thing. Sometimes the NFL takes the bait and does that and takes these guys top 10, even if they're not worth it. And then there's years like the Kenny Pickett year where it's like, oh, they learned something. Like, they're not reaching on this quarterback class. Now, this class isn't as bad as that class, and I think that there's more workable traits mixed in. So I won't be shocked if the Giants do go this route and take a Cam Ward, but I think taking a Will Campbell and figuring it out from there, or even, trading back, accumulating picks, taking a Tyler Warren type player. I know they just drafted a day or round 4 tight end, but that doesn't prevent you from doing stuff like that. Getting more weapons. Ashton Jeanty is actually a decent call, as we see Saquon Barkley going off for the Eagles this year. Just getting weapons for whoever that next quarterback is. But I could very well see, especially if they run it back with Daboll and Joe Shane, I think a rookie quarterback extends the lifespan of the GM. I don't think a rookie quarterback extends the lifespan of the head coach, though. And so I think that would be an internal conversation where, hey, can we mold Justin Fields into what we wanted Daniel Jones to be? And I think the answer is unequivocally yes, if they still are there. But I do have my doubts about that after Malik Neighbors just cooked their asses immediately after the game while chomping on his gum the other day.
Yeah, to this point with Cam, and we'll wrap it up here. His 90.6 PFF passing grade is 3rd in the nation. He looks very, very good. Ironically, Jackson Dart's 1st. We won't talk about that PFF grades, but I mean, Cam is right there. When you look at Cam Ward and what he's been able to do, just looking at the raw numbers, when you're talking about that, 37 yards, 34 touchdowns. He's looked good. I mean, if that's where they're going, I think it just comes down to what that coaching staff looks like there. All right, go ahead. Do you want to talk, Randy?
No, I was just gonna say, like I said, if it's the same cooks in the kitchen, I think it is Cam Ward. I think he's the obvious choice. I think there's a bit of a Jalen Milroe, but if we're really going more towards Jaden Daniels from last year, it's definitely Cam Ward over Milroe.
Yeah, and that's why, to Christian's point too, like, yeah, they might not like this class, but NFL is kind of dumb sometimes where they look at like, oh, look what Jaden Daniels did. Let's replicate that. Cam's got the numbers. Cam's got the games played. Cam's got so there's some similarities there, even if the tape doesn't necessarily say that either. All right, let's go to 9 through 16. My least favorite pick on the board, Ashton Jeanty, the Cowboys. I made it though, so I can't really talk that much shit. Tyreek Williams to the Saints at 10, defensive tackle. Nick Scorton, edge, going to the Bengals. Kelvin Banks Jr., offensive tackle, going to the Dolphins. Jalen Walker, edge from Georgia, going to the Bucks. Greg, is it Greg? No, Gray Zabel. I don't know what's going on. I'm having a stroke. Offensive lineman out of North Dakota State going to the Bears, which I think is a fun pick. That's a fun pick there. Malachi Starks going to the Colts. And then Michael Williams falling a little bit, I guess. I guess it just depends on the mocks out there to the Seahawks based on kind of what we've seen Michael Williams. We've seen him go all across the board in terms of that. We're going to highlight a couple picks. First one, Kelvin Banks Jr., tackle question mark out of Texas. I think there's some question marks about the tackles in this class. Like when you're talking about Campbell, Banks being a true offensive tackle. Like I think they've been talking about moving him inside. When you're looking at what he's done this year, position rank, we have him at 3. Big board rank for Christian is 40. So we drafted a little higher than what Christian had. Offensive grade, 94.7. His pass blocking grade is 90.5. And we know that. He's an elite pass blocker. Like we've seen that. We've seen him do the reps. Run blocking grade is kind of where he struggles at 78.6. I see this a lot out there when Dolphins make this pick because I've mocked it a few times. And if we're going to talk about Giants fans being toxic, Dolphins fans are pretty close when you're talking about on social media, and they hate it. They come after you and they say, "Oh, we don't need that." But I would argue that the Dolphins need a lot of help on that offensive line. I think the depth is needed. I think that depending on what they do this in the free agency and everything there, when you look at their team and the salary cap issues, why not just go grab a I don't know. I don't want to say consensus top 3, but a guy that could definitely solidify there, has some ceiling, is still young, like could really grow into that. And maybe if he does kind of go to tackle, that's great. Like you could put him there, but just a good rotational piece, a guy inside out. You can kind of plug him and play him, be a solid player for you, protect Tua, which is going to be monumental in this scheme of 2, especially from a rushing standpoint. When you think of the running back and what they like to do there and their offensive system, I think Banks makes sense here. Like, and I don't love it, but it's just kind of a need pick, right? And the Dolphins don't usually do that very much. They kind of go splashy, but I like this pick here. What do you think, Randy?
Yeah, I mean, I think he could still play tackle at the next level, but Dolphins are one of those teams where they apparently have their tackle set, but the interior they lost in free agency and everything this last year, except bringing in Aaron Brewer at center. I think the guards just aren't up to snuff right now. So I think worst case, you kick Jackson back in and, we have Kelvin Banks out there at tackle. I do think he can kick into guard, though. Either way, this is definitely just a team that needs to improve on it because you have 3 running back system right now that needs to be carrying the offense. I think that's been a little bit of the struggle. Most of Devon Achan's breakout plays have been through the passing game instead of the running game. Mostert's still working back from his injuries. And we're not really seeing anything from the rookie. So I really think they need to refocus on the offensive line. They prioritized other things. They signed the one offensive lineman they could that they wanted, and they let the others go. I think they need to refocus on that. So getting a guy that can do both for you, which is clearly what they value, is a good move.
Yeah, so I do want to mention, because I'm low on Banks Jr. compared to consensus. You're going to see him in the top 10, and I think upside wise, I can see that. I struggle with his run blocking quite a bit, and I think yes, the pass blocking grade's a 90.5, and I think we've seen some really good signs of that player being what he is. But then there's the Georgia film against the NFL players, and it's like, man, he kind of got cooked, and so I think there's still some evaluating left for him. There's a chance that he shoots up, but I do want to explain myself a little bit because I didn't get too much pushback on that in my top 50 board, but he also went down. I've evaluated a few players since then. So that said, it's an interesting fit because I think when you think of the Dolphins, one of the staples of their offense is being able to run the ball very well. Yeah. Where I think they've had more success this year, so where I think they've developed as a team is they've run a little bit more gap scheme stuff. And that's where I think Banks can be really good. I think when you get him out into space, I think he can get his shoulders over his toes a little bit. And I think he can get kind of unbalanced. And I think that's going to be a thing that he has to get better at if he does go to the Dolphins, because they still are, running pulling tackles all over the place because they're crazy. But if they're going to run some more gap scheme stuff, and that you're going to be protecting Tua, where that's the most important thing. For folks who aren't paying attention, Tua has played like an MVP over the last group of games since he's come back from injury, really. I think he's got like 11 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's averaging over 300 yards per game or something crazy like that. He's been very good. But one of those things is keeping him upright, and that's important. So I don't hate this pick. I'm curious to see what they do, because when you make this pick, Dolphins fans are like, well, Austin Jackson's our tackle. We just paid him. But he hasn't been good, really, ever. Like, he was good for one season, got paid, and that's where we've been. I still think Austin Jackson kicks inside, and they do roll with another tackle, knowing that Teron Armstead's about at the end. He's getting very old. So that's a big piece of this as well. I think this is investing in Tua and the future of this team.
Yeah, this allows you, if he wants to come back for another year, this allows you to play someone at guard. Worst case, he's now he's your starting left tackle you're bringing in. So I think it makes sense. And they definitely need athletic people, and that's why I think Banks was the pick here.
All right, let's jump over to the Bears. Christian's been having some struggle with the Bears here in terms of his fandom there. But why did you take Gray Zabel? What do you see in him?
So I have Gray Zabel ranked ahead of Kelvin Banks. Big board ranked 24, position ranked 3 still. So
hey, big boy, I don't want to cut you off, but 6'6", 305 is where he's listed too. So he's got that size.
big important piece of this evaluation as well. So as you can see on screen, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're on the podcast, check us out on YouTube and vice versa. But just elite grades across the board. When you're playing at North Dakota State, though, you put a little bit of a grain of salt on that. He's by far the best player out on that field every single time he steps on the field. That said, I mean, they also played Colorado this year, who has a pretty good defensive line, and he played pretty well against them. But the reason I went with him instead of a traditional guard or a traditional tackle is Gray Zabel is probably your best chess piece that you can draft in this offensive line class. So Gray Zabel, I wrote it up. I wish I had it sitting in front of me. I am unprepared. But Gray Zabel has played over 100 snaps at almost every single position. I want to say center is his least played position, and that's the position that most are projecting him to at the NFL level because of the versatility, because of the good movement skills, because of the nastiness. I think that there's a really good anchor in him, but there's also a really good mover. He moves very, very well. We see players like this shoot up boards, and he's going to the Senior Bowl, so that's an important piece of this evaluation. I think he's going to get the Senior Bowl bump. The versatility is important on a Bears offensive line that has shown some signs the last couple of weeks, at least at the tackle position. But if you draft this guy and you say, okay, he's our starting left guard, but Braxton Jones is out, so now you're going to start at left tackle. This is the Elijah Vera Tucker of this class. Now, he's maybe not as good. I had Elijah Vera Tucker probably in my top 10 that year. But this is the type of player that he is, and that's the type of offensive lineman the Bears desperately need right now.
Yeah, when Kevin was like, hey, why'd you pick him, Christian? All I could think of in my head was, F it, he's playing somewhere. Because that's why you're picking him here, honestly, because this is definitely I think we have the right tackle probably worked out, maybe a guard here, but the Bears offensive line has been a mixed bag at best. I feel like everyone's played a good game, but it's never been together. So I think getting a guy that can play all three, positions is smart. And yeah, I think he's going to go in this range, this 10 to 20, 25 range for sure, easily in the first round, just because he's that move piece. We saw that with like Graham Barton last year, where it's a tackle that's probably going to play guard. Now he's a starting center for the Bucs. It's the same thing of he's going to play. He's going to be a starter for us day one. He's going to fill in whatever spot we need. And, he's given that level of competition question, but the level of aggression he plays with is going to correct that, especially once we get to the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, don't you feel guys like the Bears have missed a guy like this? They haven't had a guy like
it's gritty,
just a gritty guy. I mean, and they all need him, and they need that guy there, but they just feel like they've lacked that identity, like on the line, like and they need that. I think with Caleb and everybody in there, and hopefully with a new coaching staff, right, Christian?
Let's hope so. I think
Johnson.
so.
It's got to be time. Ben Johnson, you're going to get Joe Brady. Good luck. All right, let's go to the next picks here. 17-24. Siobhan Revel Jr., cornerback going to the Rams. Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle, going to the 49ers at 18. Luther Birding going to the Broncos at 19. That's a fun pick, wide receiver out of Missouri. Mike Green, edge out of Marshall. We kind of mentioned how he jumped into Brugler's big board last week. We're going to kind of dive in a little bit deeper on that. 21, Shamar Stewart at edge out of Texas A&M. Josh Simmons, out of Ohio State, offensive tackle going to the Commanders. At 23, Walter Nolan, the Texans. I was waiting for one of these guys to draft Walter Nolan. That's their love affair there. So that was Christian. And then 24, Ravens, Wyatt Milam, whatever, guard, West Virginia. I took him there. But let's jump into why we took Luther Burden at 19. Obviously, kind of an interesting year this year. He's had some good games, some spike weeks, not some great games. Receiving grade, though, for PFF's 81.8. The offensive grade of Missouri is 80.2. Yards per route run, he's at 2.41. But why do you think this made sense, Randy, for the Broncos?
Yeah, I just think he's going to give you what we're not getting from anyone else on this roster, really. I mean, we have some of these type of guys. Mims is your kick returner now. Troy Franklin can do some of this stuff. I mean, we like him, but he's not getting the playing time he'd want. This is going to be their upgraded version of that. The way Nix is going to be able to get quarterback for this team is if he just has a bunch of weapons and he can get the ball off quick. We know Luther Burden can do all the screen game stuff and make the people miss in the open field, but we know he can do all the explosive plays. There's a reason going into the year, a lot of people were hoping he'd grow more closer to Jamar Chase in that type of role. It's kind of regressed back to 2 years ago in his role in this offense, but we're working it out. I do think he's still a really good receiver. I think he's going to be able to really catapult this offense to the next level. And again, if the Broncos are picking top 10, I think this is a different pick. I'm not going receiver. But where we're at 19 right now, we're reaching for an offensive tackle, the one that you might like if you're replacing one of your veterans. We're getting another edge rusher, possibly a second corner, maybe. But again, the guys I'd want for that kind of just went. So it's like, where am I reaching? Well, let me get a receiver I think is going to be a value at this point. And at least he has that upside potential. And again, Cortland Sutton on the outside, if you're keeping him, I think it's a great piece. He's giving you a little bit of the explosion, but he's mainly at this point just making the plays on the outside. And you're not really getting much else. Troy Franklin's stepping up at times. We're not getting consistent play from anyone. I think this helps the offense catapult to the next level, which it desperately needs to, if they're going to continue to be this type of team.
Yeah, Devon Vela has played okay for them the last few weeks, but it's interesting to me that when we talk about Luther Burden, we don't talk about him the same way we do Emeka Egbuka, and I'm pretty sure that Luther Burden plays more in the slot than Emeka Egbuka does. At least it's got to be pretty close. Right now, I know Luther Burden's slot percentage is 84.7. So I just challenge someone to tell me who's playing slot wide receiver mostly for the Broncos. And if you have an explosive player on that offense, I can't find him. It's actually been pretty remarkable that the Broncos have been able to move the ball and be as efficient on offense and win games because they don't have a guy that can just create explosives all that much. Cortland Sutton's a good receiver. Devon Bailey has been a shockingly good receiver for them, but they don't have this type of player. So while I am a little bit lower on him than consensus, that's a common theme with my big board. But I do think that this is a really, really good fit. I think Burden and Egbuka give something that this wide receiver class or this wide receiver core in Denver does not currently have.
Yeah, I think with I think it's a great pick. I like this pick. I like Burden a little bit more than I think Christian does. I just looked at the numbers real quick. So Burden's like the slot you said was 84, right? Tet has only been in the slot 22% of the time this year, which
he's enormous. That's why
I know. But when you look at like, I don't know, maybe his first year, I guess it was still down, but I thought he got moved around a lot more than that. I know this is a new coaching staff this year and new kind of system there.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I do have Emeka's number now, and Luther Burden is more of a slot wide receiver than Emeka Egbuka, and we talk about Emeka's only slot. I don't think either one of them are only slot wide receivers for what it's worth.
But yeah, it's the same. I mean, people say Brown's just in the slot, and that's not true either. So
yeah. I do think, when you look at the roster, Burden, Sutton, and Franklin possibly, and then Vio kind of being there too. Like that's not a bad for Bo Nix, what you can do. Like that's not a bad kind of area there. But hey, damn, they keep winning. They're going to keep popping up into this thing. I mean, we're talking maybe about a possible playoff team. They might not be there. All right, let's talk about Mike Green because we didn't get into him last week. We definitely want to kind of profile him this week. Edge out there. Chris was telling us he was diving into the tape this week. Like he was looking at grainy film. He was trying to find just any film he could get a hold of. Right now, defensive grade is 91.9. Pass rush grade is 90.3. What's your take here on Mike Green out of Marshall?
Yeah, so pass rush productivity 12.5 as well. But the most ironic thing with Mike Green is he's this undersized, really elite pass rusher. He's got a whole set of pass rush moves. He's got counters ready. It's some of the most advanced pass rush work, maybe the most advanced pass rush work in the entire group. But the thing that really stands out, he's only 248. Abdul Carter's only around 250. So for what it's worth, similar sized players. But Mike Green is a powerful player for a guy his size. He's throwing tackles off of him to shed to be a good run defender. There's just some really, really good stuff on film. If I'm being completely honest, and I was in our Discord, I'm probably grading him cautiously and not really even getting him to where I think his ceiling is. And maybe part of that is it's Marshall. they've played a few big teams, and I did watch some of that film, and it's still really good. But I'd love to see him in one of these all-star circuits. We're not going to. He's a junior. He's that good that he's getting buzz from Marshall. One of the bendiest players in this class. We do have a slew of bendy edges in this group for the first time in what I want to say is a while. If you include Jalen Walker, I mean, Abdul Carter, all these guys, James Pierce, there's a ton, Princely, there's a lot of really bendy guys, but Green to me is one of the most put together ones that can impact, all three downs. I think him, Abdul Carter, and Jalen Walker are the three like super bendy guys that can do that. And to me, it's it would just be a very Falcons pick to go with an undersized edge rusher. And I think that the Falcons, this would be correcting what they did. Yeah. And the Falcons have needed an edge rusher for about 3 years. I think every time someone said on Blue Sky this week, every time Jared Verse makes a play, the Michael Penix pick looks worse. And it's like, yeah, maybe, because this Falcons team might have been ready to really compete. And who knows if they're even going to win their division right now because they're not getting any production on their defensive line. So Mike Green is a great fit for them. That said, they'll probably do something stupid like take a skill position player. They'll probably take a wide receiver.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%. When you're looking at Mike Green, and I'll let Randy go, 15 sacks this year for those of you that don't know in terms of raw numbers, 33 hurries, 8 hits. I think one thing too, against Ohio State, he didn't have any sack, or he did have a sack, excuse me. He graded out pretty good against Ohio State. And that's when they had their guys too. So like he's played well, like even against the big opponents too there. So I like this fit and I like the player.
No, I mean, we said before the show, with Marshall, it's hard to see a lot of the film. I think I'm going to go back and, I mean, you just got to watch at this point the Ohio State side of it and just watch him. But it's just, I believe he's going to the East-West Shrine Bowl right now, but he's on the watch list for the Senior Bowl. That's what I was kind of looking up while Christian was going. He just needs to get to one of these and just dominate. And this is going to be a lock for the first.
He must be an early grad then. Because I'm pretty sure.
Senior Bowl, I believe last year started accepting juniors.
I forgot that they let juniors in, like nerds.
But it's like special cases though. Like it won't be everyone, but somebody from like Mike Green from Marshall is the type of person they would let in.
How the hell are we calling the Senior Bowl the Senior Bowl if we're letting in like juniors now?
Well,
yeah,
that's why Shador picked. Where is he going? The Shrine Bowl.
He's going to the Shrine.
Yeah. Come on, Nagy. What the hell are you doing out here? This false, this fake news, mainstream media.
Yeah, they just got to call it the Reese's Bowl.
Yeah.
Just use the sponsor.
Nagy's not on Blue Sky, huh? He's just Yep. See, that's why negative news and just he's too woke or not enough woke over there for that. Over there. All right, let's move on. We're gonna go through the next picks here. Kind of finish out the first. We'll talk about a couple more player profiles. Colston Loveland going over to the Chargers. Full disclosure, I did not make that pick, so don't be yelling at me as a homer in the comments and giving me all that crap. Derek Harmon at 26, the defensive tackle at Oregon to Green Bay. And I will again say Green Bay is the toughest team to mock for in these things. Like they could go 60 different ways with their pick. The Steelers took Emeka Egbuka, Ohio State wide receiver. Jedi Barron, cornerback out of Texas, goes to the Minnesota Vikings. Tyler Warren goes to the Philadelphia Eagles, which I think is an interesting pick there. I think it's a great pick. I think that, with Goddard, he's in and out injury, going to that offensive line, kind of helping on the offensive line as well. That was my favorite pick of the mock, so I just want to throw that out there. Bills take LT Overton, edge out of Alabama. James Pierce goes to the Chiefs, and in the Lions take Isaiah Bond. We snuck Isaiah Bond in there out of Texas. Kind of wrap that up. First time we've seen Bond. I think we've done this where we're like, yeah, we're going to win the first round there. But let's start with Colston Loveland. So tight end out of Michigan, just broke a couple of records for Michigan in terms for tight end production, receptions, yards. Should be there on yards as long as he's not banged up against Ohio State. Right now, they have met position 2 tight end. I am at 1, very close with Tyler Warren. Offensive grade is 83.4. Receiving grade is 88.0. Yards per route run, 2.67. this is a match made in heaven to the Chargers. Like this fits him and what they're trying to do. So I do think this is a great pick, Randy. Why is it just a fit, this offense, what they need, everything kind of makes sense?
Yeah, it's just everything. It's obviously a fit schematically. It's a fit, player coach, obviously. Not just trying to do the Michigan, but the type of player Loveland is. He's clearly going to be able to work hard for this team, and with his versatility, it helps out with their receiving core. Obviously McConkey's more of a slot, but he's moving around. Johnson's starting to come alive. Palmer's up and down. You need another guy in here. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, they went heavy on rebuilding other pieces of this team this last year. I'm not going to be shocked if in the first 2 days they take 2 offensive weapons just to really shape this again, whether it be Loveland here and like Restrepo or another receiver day 2 or something like that. I think that's something that's going to be great for them to really catapult us to the next level. Coaching and just team building and changing the culture of this team is why they are winning on Monday Night Football, why they're currently a playoff team. I think Loveland helps catapult them to that next step. They need to be a more thoroughbred offense. You don't have the weapons to pair with the quarterback right now. You have complementary pieces that are playing well with a good quarterback, a line that's playing well. You really need that next level. If you can get a younger running back in here too and everything, it's going to be great. But Loveland, as we're seeing with the Raiders this year, it can really just change the dynamic of the offense. I think Bowers for the Raiders was the best weapon on the team, even with Adams there this year. And I think Loveland will bring that same kind of electricity to this offense.
So I do want to caution people who are fading Colston Loveland, because despite me having him too, that's not a Loveland fade. That's just simply I like Tyler Warren's skill set as an all-around player more. Yeah, but if you look at, first, if you look at that offense, you vomit, you puke everywhere, and it's gross. But still, he's been more efficient. I put his yards per route run on this graphic because this is his highest career yards per route run. He can't run as many routes because they can't throw the ball as many times. So obviously the counting stats are a little bit down. He's probably, there's a chance that he goes over his yardage total from last year, but 84 targets this year to 62 last year. The efficiency is a little bit down, 10.4 yards per reception. He was over 14 in the previous 2 years, but he had an NFL quarterback, a first-round NFL quarterback with him, and that's an important piece of his evaluation. So we already know that Jim Harbaugh knows exactly what type of player he is. I do think this is a good fit. The only pause I have is simply how good Will Dissly has been as a receiver over the last few weeks, but that doesn't Michael Mayer was a fine receiver for the Raiders when they took Brock Bowers. And so it doesn't really change. Will Dissly's not preventing you from taking Colston Loveland, or it shouldn't at least. So.
And it's the same thing too, that the last 3 weeks, Michael Mayer has started to come along more since Adams has been gone. He's their, I'd say, third best weapon, but Jacoby Myers is getting the top corners. These 2 tight ends are really moving the ball for this team. I think it's the same thing. You have pieces on this team, complementary pieces right now. You have veteran running backs that are helping move the ball. We need to get young electric pieces, whether it's Warren or Loveland or Abuka or whoever. Isaiah Bond would work just to get that extra speed, but you kind of have that. It's just, you need somebody that's going to be a consistent chain mover as well as be that true number 1 to allow these other guys to really thrive.
I think they could add a couple pieces. So I like what you mentioned, but I think Kyron Lacey could be out there, plus get a slot guy, get someone like that as well later. I think the Restrepo pick is an interesting one because he fits this. If they got Loveland and him, like, man, that would be fun. And Herbert be like, thank you, Harbaugh. Like that fit him because, and you still have Ladd out there, right? And you still have kind of these other areas where you can kind of move. To me, I think you guys made a good hit there. I think what Christian's trying to point out, I've seen some very poor Loveland takes out there. I'm like not in the top 5 of his class, which I think is ridiculous. It's just absurd. I'm sorry. Like just from a receiving standpoint, he should be top 2. If you want to nitpick on his line blocking, that's fine. You can do whatever you want there. But I think that he's serviceable there. And he was a big part of Blake Corum last year doing what Blake Corum did, and he was in those moments too. All right, let's go over to the Bills. I took LT Overton, not a very confident pick in this one for me. At an edge, 6'5", 283, hasn't lived up to huge expectations of Alabama. Honestly, I think he might come back when you're looking at the team. 77.3 pass grade, defensive grade's been okay. And when you look at just the raw numbers, 2 sacks, 25 hurries though. He does get after the quarterback. There is potential there. As a pass rusher, it's kind of unique. He's got good size and power, and for his size, he's quickish. He can use speed to get around the edge. When you watch him there, I think just consistency is his problem. So for a big thing with him is I do think he comes back, but if he can hit that consistency, let's say he does come back, kind of develops that consistency and really kind of develops just a little bit more moves when you're talking about what he's been able to do. Can't just use his size and strength the whole time. If he does that, and maybe, his position, depending on where he's at, just based on it, I don't know if he's a perfect edge guy at 285. Where is he going to be? He loses a little weight or maybe gains some, pushes inside a little bit more. I think he's an interesting prospect. I do think the Bills need to finish on an edge guy. But yeah, James Pierce is being there. Some of these other guys still on the board. I'll take Overton for now, but I do think he's coming back. What do you think, Christian?
Yeah, I was actually going to lead with that. He's low on my board. Traditionally, when guys are this low on my board and I'm so far off a consensus, those guys do come back. I do think PFF has him at 37 overall right now, so there's potential for him to declare. He's a traits-based pick. We have a lot of traits-based picks in this edge class, though. I personally would prefer to have him bump inside. He's athletic enough to play on the outside. I think you'll watch him close, to the sideline against a running back, and it's impressive stuff. But also, he's a powerful kid. That said, he hasn't quite put it all together yet. There's just not enough actual technique there for me. And sometimes if those players do declare, they start to fall a little bit in the draft. So I think there's a chance he goes back. But as far as team fit goes, the Bills and an edge rusher or a defensive tackle are like a match made in heaven. I think corner's still a good shout for them. They've gotten some good play out of a couple of those guys, but I think they have to go either defense or just double tap wide receiver in back-to-back years. With Keon Coleman's been okay. I think Amari Cooper's under contract next year, though, so it's really tough to justify doing anything other than defensive line or corner. So I understand the fit for sure, but it's just one of those guys where this kind of speaks to the depth of this class, where it's we have 4 guys that we put in the first round. They're always in the first round. And then after that, it's we're going to throw a couple names here and see if that's the guy that lands in the back of the first.
Yeah.
Overton's one of those guys to me.
He is.
Yeah. It makes sense because he's along the same lines as Rousseau and Epinesa, to where they're more of a bigger edges. They can play inside at times. Rousseau's kind of developed into a more, all-around player that kicks in too. Epinesa's more of a edge setter that's getting sacks and pressure. I think this is a good complement piece that's going to be able to get you that pressure that you need and allow you to truly move in. Because, you have Ed Oliver, his injury history has been up and down. But other than that, they've still been trying to find that D-tackle 2 piece to really, especially on the rushing side. They have Austin Jackson and a few others, Daquan Jones, I think. Yeah. And it's just they haven't really gotten that second piece to really be that other dominant force next to him. I'm not sure that's going to be him, but I think that allows you to let Rousseau actually go in and do that if you truly get a third edge rusher with this team. They got Von Miller. He's made a couple plays this year. He's probably off this team, I'd hope, next year. You need that same rush, that edge 3 coming in, but young and cheap, and that will really reshape this team fully. Von Miller's kind of that last big paid veteran defender on this team, and hopefully he's gone after this year and we can replace him with one of these guys. But Overton is definitely a guy that we need to see more, but at least the flashes are there, and he's able to play on all 3 downs. And that's the big thing, I think, with the Bills. They want guys that can play every snap and rotate in. This is a team that's clearly going to rebuild through the trenches again this year. They want a little bit more exterior and other things. I think wide receiver and corner, like Christian said, are other things that they could do. Maybe get rid of Rasul Douglas and try and reshape it past then. But yeah, trenches where the Bills always pick, and there's a reason. And there's a reason they're good.
I almost went wide receiver. I was like this close to grabbing another wide receiver, and then I looked and I was like, Amari Cooper's coming back on the contract. Like Shakur's been there, like, and then they have Kincaid still. Like I almost did it, but I was like, no, I can't see him going another first round wide receiver.
No, it'll be day 2, I think. I think they probably go another guard, maybe a guy that can go inside outside. Asias Torrance really has been what they wanted. I think Douglas, like I said, has kind of fallen off a bit, so maybe replacing that. Since basically because he's not going to the slot because they have a better slot, probably the best in the league right now. So they really need a true outside. But again, is that here? I mean, I went JD Barron before.
Yeah.
I mean, you're picking an upside pick here one way or the other. And when that's the case, the Bills go trenches.
All right. Well, that's it. That's our 2025 mock based on this. I think next one we're going to be doing some trades. I think that'll be fun to kind of dive in. We'll do a little bit of trades there. Any final thoughts, Christian, on the mock overall? Any picks that you kind of stood out? I know we didn't talk about every single one. Anything else?
No, it's funny you said that the Ashton Jeanty to the Cowboys was your least favorite pick that you picked specifically. But I do wonder what his draft range is. He's still balling, like he's still just going absurd. He's going to break some records this year. And so we had him in the top 10. I've seen him as low as like in the mid to late 20s. That's the one thing that I just can't pinpoint when we're doing these mocks is what team will take a running back that high.
It's weird because, again, he deserves to be up there. It was the same thing, though, we were doing with Bijan, where it was like, man, he needs to go this high. He's too good. And it was very apparent it should be the Falcons, and then we didn't think it could be the Falcons, and then it ended up being the Falcons. I think we're going to be the same case with the Cowboys this whole time, unless they keep losing. Obviously, they got a big win and divisional game this week, but
Stupid.
if they can keep, it's whatever.
Dumb.
But if they can keep winning, maybe they trade this pick. Maybe they actually get some intelligence in that room, or maybe he listens to someone else for once. But yeah, it's one of those things where if it's not the Cowboys, is it the Bengals? Is it
maybe? Probably.
The Bears just paid a running back. They need offensive line. I don't know. 49ers and Rams seem to pick one every year. I don't think they will, though. As you go down further on the board, again, Broncos, I think that's a phenomenal chance if he's there. I think they would value the running back more. I know they got Estime. He's played one good game. They clearly are switching back and forth. I think he wants his guy, and he did that with Kamara back in the day. I think it'll happen again here. And he always had someone else to rotate in. So I think that makes sense. It's just one of those. He's definitely one of the bad ones only for the Cardinals just took one. Are they going to do it again? Commanders have paid 2 running backs now. Are they going to draft a third? Texans, do they get rid of Joe Mixon, who's having his career year? Ravens, do you get the heir apparent in the first round? It's an awkward situation.
The team that I think is a dark horse for it that would really piss a lot of people off, especially to play Dynasty fantasy football, the Seattle Seahawks could probably use another running back. Charbonnet has been fine. Ken Walker has been good, but there's a reason that running attack is not very good, and I think Jeanty fixes that. So
if we're going to talk about disappointing running backs, the Colts at 15.
Man, wouldn't that be something? Ashton Jeanty and Jonathan Taylor split with Anthony Richardson in the backfield. Let's do it.
I will say there's no way he's getting past the Chargers. I think that's kind of the stop gap of the.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. It makes the most sense. They want to run the ball. They have 2 veteran running backs carrying the load, both on bad knees.
Can I give my Dallas Cowboy rant though about why Jeanty shouldn't go there? And this is going to be because of Jeanty. It's not I think he's an incredible player. The thing with Gibbs is he went to a place when he got selected, no one expected him to go top 15, whatever it was. They had a role ready for him, and they followed that, and he's one of the best backs in the league, and they had Monty there, and they have a great offensive line. The Cowboys are going to draft this kid and screw him because they don't have, their offensive line's okay, but what's their identity? And I don't see to me, the Cowboys have so many needs And like, I don't want him to go there because I don't want to ruin him. Like, I really don't. Like, I just look at that situation. If I was Jeanty and I went to the Bengals, I would love that situation much more. I think that they have an identity. Yes, their owner sucks too, but you know what? They have Burrow, they have Chase, they have a better offensive line, in my opinion. He's better than Jerry Jones, and I think that they have that system there. Like, to me, it's not really Jeanty. Like, if he went to the Cowboys, I'd love it. I'd be like, oh, okay. You know what? He's gonna get 250 freaking carries, and he's gonna have his day. Like, I don't see a problem with that pick. I just don't want him to go to Cowboys for Jeanty because I think there's better spots for him from a production standpoint and a career standpoint. Just like I saw him getting mocked sometimes at the Patriots, like them just taking a running back like Jeanty. And like, honestly, though, Ramondre's look like ass. Gibson is getting more carries than them. I could see them being like, yeah, we'll take Jeanty, and I would be awful for everybody involved. Drake May, like everybody too. So like for me, it's just like, hey, who gives him the best opportunity to succeed in his career? That's kind of where I'm at with him, because some of these teams, I'm like, don't take him because you're going to ruin him.
Just wait till the Raiders take him top 3.
There's many teams on here that he would be
the Browns
amazing for.
Hey,
the Browns could take him,
but it'd be the second round. Like, that's the ones at the top are going to trade back in. I don't think they're not taking top 3.
Remember, Browns are now sitting at 8. Yeah, we did this before week 12, so
I know
if they start to move back into that like 10 to 15 range,
they could.
It would suck for Browns fans because they'd waste Jeanty behind Nick Chubb for a year. I don't know. Nick Chubb might not be a Brown next year, so we'll see.
I just don't see it. He's loved by the team, loved by the city. It's an awkward situation.
Yeah,
for that.
That's right.
Well, the Browns they know about awkward situations. Like, let's not pretend like they don't know.
I'm just saying, Deshaun Watson's hurt and he's not on the sideline. I don't know where he is. I don't want to speculate, but he's not on the sideline.
All right, with that, we're gonna wrap this baby up of the Quarters Podcast. Make sure you download us on Apple Podcast, Spotify. You can find us here at YouTube as well. We'll be back next week talking a little bit of everything. We're gonna be talking all draft stuff as it's ramping up here. We'll be into December. We're getting close. We're getting close to draft season declares, Senior Bowl or Junior Bowl, whatever the hell they call it now, and kind of going through there. We are pro Shrine Bowl on this show now. So Nagy. Actually, no, I'm pro Nagy because he's not on Blue Sky. But everything else, like keep yourself over there. We appreciate you guys. We'll check you guys in the next episode.